I don't know if we need some help getting this loaded here, but in the meanwhile, I can't see this very well. Is this where it goes? Okay, that should work. I've been asked to see if anybody in this room was a speaker in the morning session in the other place and may have picked up the laser pointer. It needs to be returned. It's my pleasure to introduce Lucila Ohno-Machado at UCSD. She heads the Telemedicine Institute, and she is going to talk to us about sharing software and data. So we're on hard 10-minute talks.
All right.
There we go.
Well, thank you, and I'll try to be brief, and I know there is a counter going on there. So I will talk about sharing software and data in the context of a center that we run through here, UCSD, integrating data for analysis, anonymization, and sharing, named iDash. So the barriers for sharing, probably you've heard of a lot of those already. Data sharing plans are required in all of our grants, but there is actually little incentive to share once you publish your paper. And there is one model only. Usually you put that data for others to download. And it's a yes-no decision on sharing. Since we work a lot with protected health information, of electronic health records, for example, or clinical trials in which a lot of patient information is involved, this many times implies a yes-no decision on sharing. Data use agreements across institutions can be made, and I'm sure some of you have already signed, or your institutions have signed on your behalf some of this. They're usually pairwise, limited, and complicated, specific to a particular study. The lawyers are always involved. Their resources for sharing are actually very limited. So many investigators give up after trying to get to that phase. Security privacy constraints are hard for small institutions or small groups of investigators to follow. So if they say you have to have a HIPAA compliant environment, are you going to study what that is and then put it in place? Or do you have a team that does that? So that sometimes complicates business. So the National Centers for Biomedical Computing, there are 6 of them funded right now. We were the last one to be funded, and we made it our goal to study the mechanisms of sharing, how to facilitate them, how people could be incentivized to share data, and how we would do it in a way that protects individual privacy, institutional privacy as well. The goal being, we want to share access to data. Sometimes it's not sharing the data themselves, but sharing access to it so you can do your investigations. Allow healthcare providers or biomedical researchers to concentrate on the science of it, and hopefully outsource all this data sharing activity to a third party that could provide software platform and infrastructure for that to happen. It all in a way that privacy is protected, and then through the center, share not only data, workflows, but also share computation, share security, and share policies that were learned during the process. So I'll go very briefly about the models for data sharing. And within those models, I also comment a little bit on cloud storage, and cloud compute, because it's been of more interest by many, and sometimes it's a little bit confused of what is cloud and what's not cloud. Many people know cloud storage, so you have your Dropbox or iCloud and other things, and some use cloud for computation in the Amazon cloud, for example. So there are different ways of using the cloud, and then there are also different ways of sharing data in the cloud. So I'll go about these 3 models that we envision and we are implementing in the center. So here's the schematic of it. There's iDash with access controls, and I don't have a pointer, so I'll use the computer. The data owner here is the traditional model. You want to donate data. You're done with your research. You have that collection of data well annotated, all with metadata with it, all the standards and so on. And you want to contribute that data to the world. And then, if necessary, you sign a contributor data use agreement. That's your institution donating the data to a center, and with some quality assurance that data are received within the center and stays there to be distributed to the parties that you allowed to. It may be everyone, it may be a certain group of investigators, it might be depending on the consent that you got from the patients, the human subjects under study, and so on. So easy to understand data contribution agreement. Also, you can have a tool that you just published on. You just created the software and you want to donate for others to use. So that there is a quality assurance process, and you can donate that tool as well. And you can be more than that. You wrote this paper that used the pipeline of tools with very specific OS versions and application versions and so on. And you package them all together and you produce a virtual machine that you then donate for others to use, so that when they use, they don't need to install everything exactly the way you install and so on. So again, there are 3 different data sharing models. One of them is the traditional one, just the same as your iCloud or Dropbox. You're a user down there, you realize that data are interesting. You obtain that data, again, through a data use agreement with the center, as opposed to having to contact the data owner directly, because that is very onerous on the part of the data owner, that everyone who wants to get that data contacts you and has to sign an agreement and so on. And then you download the data and use it in your own environment. So most prevalent model today, used by several people, but not necessarily very scalable. Also, the provenance of the data is secured at that point, but if that data goes to some other party, then you have basically no control of that. Hosting data to share with others is one thing that we've done in the center. We had the lawyers from the University of California to help write this data contributor agreements, as well as the data use agreements, so that it facilitates business. And once one institution has participated in it, the next time they ask is much simpler, because the lawyers have been through this and so on. So that then you serve as the agent for the data. Another model is to have users compute with the data within the environment and use the computational environment of the center, so that you have your good idea, your good query, and you use the center's resources to do that. The advantages being you might not have the computers needed to do that analysis, and the center would, and the data remain protected at their own environment. And we kind of know exactly what analysis are being run over there, so that is one a little less flexible environment, but also one that is very scalable. So in order to do that, we constructed services and infrastructure so that we can accommodate that type of use, and including what we call infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, as well as what you're familiar with, which would be the software as a service. There's another model, which is to export computation, and that's model number 3, in which users perform computation in their own environment. And this is very prevalent in the healthcare institutions. They cannot have the data transferred elsewhere, but they want to participate in a study. So in that case, they can download, for example, the VM to run in their own environment. And what we do, we get the answers, we get coefficients, we get covariance matrices from the centers, aggregate them all, and produce a model that is as accurate as if we had all the data at our hands. And this is very reassuring for institutions and also for international collaborators. In case of health records like we have, there are some countries that do not allow the records to be physically moved to a server outside the country. And in this way, you can do that computation and use their data as well. So again, we did this distributed regression models in which we have the data never moves. We ask the questions, we aggregate, we create models based on a distributed environment. This is when, again, the data cannot move out of where they are, but you can move the computation to the data. We have also, at the University of California, an agreement to consult with clinical data warehouses and other research data from 5 medical centers, so we can aggregate a lot of that data. And there are objectives both for patient safety but also for research. Finally, we have patient management system. We're developing that, in which patients would declare if their data can be used for other purposes. And if we have that, then we simplify a lot the use of data in other environments. So this is what we are developing right now. This is the website, so I encourage you to go visit us. And if to remember anything from this 10 minutes, it's one model does not fit all. So you might have a different need, and hopefully one of those 3 models would be appropriate for you. And finally, I wanted to acknowledge everyone who contributed to this work.
I'd like to invite all the speakers up for the panel session.